MP, it feels like every area of life at the moment is undergoing revolution.
I'm glad you said that, Bretto, because at this year's Wellness Summit virtual experience, all of our speakers are presenting on the revolution.
Yeah, and it's such a topsy-turvy world right now. It feels like everything's been turned upside down, whether it's your finances, your food, your health, your longevity, your family. All of these things are just in such a state of flux right now that we really need to get the experts in to give us the lowdown.
That's why we have Jason Witten on the financial revolution, Cindy O'Meara on the food revolution,
Kim Morrison on the self-love revolution, Marcus Pearce on the longevity revolution,
the great Brett Hill on the resilience revolution, Andrea Huddleston on the hormones revolution,
and of course Joe Witten on the food and family revolution.
And for the first time ever, we'll have breakout sessions on the energy revolution, the career revolution,
the barefoot revolution, the real food revolution,
and the parenting revolution. All this and more at the Wellness Summit, September 11 and 12. Book your tickets at thewellnesssummit.com.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tennant. Sorry, I'm laughing. I can't stop laughing. Just give me a minute to sort myself out. Okay. Sorry, Bridget, you can or I'm just going to be
today we're laughing because for the first time in 5 years I couldn't get the intro right, so figure that out. But we do have a wonderful guest with us today, and it's a special podcast because we have got a podcast here for all of the women birthing in these uncertain times, and we have with us a midwife called Susan who works in the public hospital system. Welcome, Susan.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you very, very much for inviting me to talk about this. It's a huge topic at the moment.
It is a huge topic, and also just one that we would really love to empower as many women with as is humanly possible to make the choices that can provide them with the most empowered birth experience that they can have in uncertain times like we find ourselves in currently within a pandemic. So we both know you personally and also know that you're a huge advocate of natural birth and women and mothers and babies being together and all that gorgeous, juicy, birthy, earthy stuff that if you're a listener of the podcast, you know Bridgie and I are right in for. So it's also why I think that you're an incredible person to have this conversation with, because you understand birth in the light that we do. And you also understand the constraints and the system within which women are currently birthing at the moment. So we would really love for this to be, look, here's the changes and here's how you can work with them and make it your best possible outcome and experience. So before we sort of roll into what all of the changes are, is there anything that you would really like the mothers that are birthing in this pandemic to know?
I think the most important thing is to remember that I've been thinking about this all day, that we come from a line of women and men who've been through traumas and all sorts of difficult situations in the past for hundreds, thousands of years. And we've got to this point in our world and we've all survived. And women are pretty amazing creatures, and we do adapt and we are resilient, but sometimes we just forget that, and sometimes we allow, particularly in this world of media-driven frenzy, we allow that to take hold and forget that actually we are amazing people and we can do anything that we put our minds to and our bodies to. And let's stop taking on the story of fear and do what we need to do to get through it.
That's
and I'm reminded of a quote. Again, I've been just reading a little bit of Maya Angelou, who was an African-American activist, feminist, amazing woman. And just two of her simple quotes are, we can't always change the situation, but we can change our attitude to it. And I totally agree with that. And the other one was along similar lines, but the last part of it is, and don't let it reduce us. So don't let it make us small. Use this challenge to step up, step out, show that we can be brave and strong. And that's telling our generations of babies to come that we can do that as well. And, I think we just give in too easily to fear, and it's time we just didn't. But I was saying to Jules and Bridget just before that I get the anxiety, and if it's something that's happening to me, I am so good at over-catastrophizing and find it really, I have to use every skill I know to bring myself back down to a level where I can approach something with calm. So I absolutely get your anxiety and fear, and I'm much better at being the person to calm somebody down than having somebody calm me down. So it's really nice to share this opportunity to talk about this stuff because, oh God, I don't want to say we're all in it together.
But I actually think that's beautiful, because one of the points that you and I have spoken about on several occasions is the fact that as staff within this system, and particularly as midwives in the care of women, you're really your hearts are invested in making this the best possible experience for these women, and you're working so hard to do that. So we don't want anyone to dismiss, the system and the blah, 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 because there's these individuals within it that are giving their heart and soul. Yeah.
Which I think is a beautiful place to actually just give a little bit of background to Susan, if you don't mind me just giving everybody, your bio, which is really that you've been a midwife in the public system for 20 years. Working with women across all areas of pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period in high and low risk settings. Susan has also been an international board certified lactation consultant for the past 8 years and currently specialises in antenatal care, childbirth education, and lactation support. Susan is committed to and privileged to be supporting women and their partners through their experience in the public system and focusing on the family's strengths and hopefully building resilience during this incredible time, which we're hearing right now from you, Susan, with your beautiful heart.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that, Susan, in terms of staff just really trying their hardest during this time?
Oh, absolutely. Our midwives on the ward are incredible. They're facing so many challenges. And I've had a lot of feedback from families that I visit at home or in lactation clinics saying they know that they're struggling with some of the new policies that are coming in, the fear factor of this COVID coronavirus. You can see it in their faces, but they don't let it swamp them. And they're learning to communicate with their masks and their face shields and their gowns. And again, I said to you too before that I've been working really hard at using my eyes behind my shield and face mask, and my voice and my breath to maintain that connection with the woman, even though we're trying to be as hands-off as possible. And sorry, I just got it. I'm very good at going off track and going into another world. But the midwives on the ward, well, all of us in the clinics, we're trying our very best to make you feel welcome, to get as much education and information across to you as possible in a very limited time frame. And on the ward in the birth unit, they are working so hard to make sure this is absolutely the best experience of your life. It might not be the experience that you hoped for or had dreamt about or read about in all the beautiful books that are available out there on physiological natural birth, but it will be an incredibly transformative experience for you, and that's what we aim to provide with love and support. And you can have a really challenging experience, but if you feel like it's been discussed in depth and you haven't been railroaded and you've been the centre of decision making, it can be an incredibly empowering experience, positive, full of joy, and you've got through something. And birth, if nothing else, is transformative. Becoming parents is transformative. You become different people and you grow through that. Every single day of your life as a parent, you grow. I mean, mine have all left home now, and I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, you sign up for life, don't you?
You do.
No, I really do love that. I really do love that. Do you feel like we could talk about some of the changes so that we can sort of talk about how we can best set ourselves up to have a positive experience? Would that be okay with you to move through?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to list them off, or you're happy to go?
I'm happy to go.
Okay, cool. Go.
Well, I was just kind of going in a chronological order, and I suppose your very first visit's going to be with your GP to confirm the pregnancy, and that might be, again, in this strange world, a telehealth appointment. So you already feel a bit disconnected and removed from that system, but it's okay. You know, you will be referred to the hospital of your choice for the birth after you've had all your bloods taken, and if you're interested in getting any early scans done. But that's the first block, is like, partners aren't allowed to present with you to the scans at the moment. So again, for the partners, it can be really disappointing that that's not happening. But you can take a video and again have them on the end of the phone so they can listen to the consultation. I'm sure that's doable in any of your scan appointments. And then you book into the hospital, and you know it's can be a waiting game. I've had a couple of calls this week where women have said, I know my doctor's made the referral, but I haven't received anything yet. You know, am I booked in? How's that going to work out? And already this fear is rising, and it's okay. We have the referral. It just sometimes takes a couple of weeks and you have to be patient. But of course, when you first find out you're pregnant, you're so excited and you want to just do everything right now and have it all out there laid out so you know what to do. We will get there, I promise. Your first booking appointment will be over the phone now. It kind of upset me in the beginning. It's like, but that's the first time we get to smile at a woman and open our arms and say welcome. And this is an amazing place and beautiful midwives and amazing doctors if you need them. And that's been taken away from us. Okay, that's something that. Again, I've learned so much from Jules and Bridget through this. It was this moment of, I have my list of women of who I have to call today to welcome to the hospital and get all their health history. And I just now look at their names and I wear this crystal all the time, and I just touch this and I kind of get an idea of who they might be, what they might look like. I don't know. It's just my way of managing it. So finding these ways of getting around the things that you don't like. That for me was one way of just, okay, think about who this woman is that I'm ringing. And it was an absolute game changer for me. And I love doing phone visits now.
Beautiful.
I love
Isn't
doing
that fabulous?
them.
Because this is the thing, right? Connection doesn't exist only in physical matter.
Yes. Yeah, that energy is.
Yeah, we're
there.
all connected, but it's about when you lose, it's like losing one sense. So we've lost touch or whatever that physical representation of consultation means. So it almost heightens the ones that are left, right? And so here you are, heightening energetic sensitivity and connection in all of its different forms, which, as I've had the conversation with you about, is enormously impactful on how that unfolds with those women, the connection that they themselves then feel towards you as their caregiver.
Yeah, definitely. It's so I'm finding phone bookings are really quite fun. I mean, sometimes they're challenging depending on the situation, and but most of the time that connection is really possible. So just trust that whoever's booking you in will. I mean, we've all got our different ways of doing it, I suppose, but we'll get all your information, then we'll plan all your visits, and that's the next change. So most visits are face-to-face, but some will be over the phone. So there's slightly less face-to-face where we don't get to listen to the heartbeat. But we're really focused and encouraging you to get to know your baby's movements. This is the most important thing that you can do with your baby over any ultrasound, any handheld Doppler, is you getting to know your baby. And you know what? That's fantastic, because now you're going to be connecting to your baby probably a lot more, because you're not relying on some technology to do it for you. And it gives you that chance to rub your belly and talk to your baby and just spend that time being with babies. So I think that's one of the positive things to have come out of this, perhaps. If there is a need to do ultrasounds, we will do them. We will encourage you to have them. We'll advise you to have them if there's a need. So in the antenatal, where was I? We were booking in. We've got all your information. So some are face-to-face visits. And again, the partners weren't able to come. So the women come to their visits, they wait in the car park, and then we call them from the room when we're ready to see them. And when we had that very brief moment of time when we were just stage 3 instead of stage 4, usually the men, but whoever the partners are, were allowed back in the room again, so everybody got really excited about that. And then stage 4 happened. It was like, no, sorry, put the brakes on. Partners, support people can't come back into the room. But the answer to that is...
Can I just ask you about that? So, because I've been toying with that in my head about whether that could be a good thing or not good thing, having partners in the room, because, you know, as you know, being a doula trained by Rhea Dempsey, one of the most impactful moments that I had with her was when she shared the statistical rates of epidurals that would match the rates at which partners have entered the birthing room.
Yeah.
As part of me, and as you know, being a birth worker as well, there's some births I go, you'd be better off without your partner in the room right now. Like, there's some births I think, yep, if we're in the old days, I reckon you would have done a whole lot better here in this whole, because there's relationship dynamics that come in and partners that are facing their own stuff, and it infiltrates what happens in the birth space. So I'm fascinated by the concept of partners now not being able, I mean, I guess it's not in the birth space anymore, but what you think about that. Do you see that there's also an equilibrating, it works both ways?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's also a lot of evidence now that's coming through saying that the more involved partners are, the more oxytocin that flows, the more connected they are to their babies. And it starts back then when they first find out about pregnancy. The more interested they are, the more invested they are, and the more excited they are. And I think that's got to be encouraged. But there have definitely been some times where in clinic appointments you can see the men are not really that interested, and you wonder how that's going to play out for the rest of their birth. There'll be the men who stand in the corner, or maybe start asking questions about the epidurals sooner than later. or even sit down and read the paper or ask if they can watch the football. But that's who they are, and that's the life that baby's coming into, and that's the life that it might not just be the men that are like that either. It's whoever the support person is. Or it might be the support person's really controlling and calls all the shots, and that's quite a red flag for us in our clinic appointments. The partner who is sometimes, my Coles online delivery's just arrived. Sorry, somebody just knocked on the door. That's the first time I've ever done it. It's so exciting. I don't have to answer the door though, so that's right. Just sorry, guys, it's totally irrelevant. I get so distracted easily.
No, we were just talking around partners. I was just thinking, I wonder for some.
That's what I was going to say.
For the vast majority, it's harder not having your partner there, but I wonder for some if it works in the opposite.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It can be very detrimental having partners there, but most of the time it's really good. And more and more so, it's becoming a really positive, beautiful experience for both of them. And to see a dad's eyes light up, and I'm sorry if I'm mostly talking about partners as being men, but mostly they are where I work. But for any partner, we have a lot of same-sex couples as well, and for any partner who hears their baby's heartbeat for the first time and seeing that in their eyes, they're so excited, and you just know that you've got them. And I think back to my generation, I don't think my husband came to he probably didn't come to any of my clinic appointments. He still had the option of going to the pub while he waited for me to labour. He didn't, luckily, but and he was made very much to feel in the way in my birth space, in the birth space. And sometimes I wish I could go back and have sorry, he's just said he's got the shopping. Have another baby so that I could bring him back in to do it all so differently to how it was done. But you go back even earlier than that, and it was women's business. Men weren't there at all. But I don't know. I just sometimes think maybe that's why the world's a bit messed up, because we've denied men this access to this very powerful love hormone of oxytocin and connection and bonding. You know, we could talk for hours on that subject.
That's so interesting. Yes, let's get back to pandemic.
Let's get back to So
at most visits, most visits partners aren't allowed, but
no, but they can still be.
But they can be on the phone, yeah.
And we can have them on the phone, and they can ask questions, and they can listen. You know, we'll put the phone right up to the Doppler so they can listen to the heartbeat. The other downside to this, we've realised, particularly in winter, was some of our appointments are about 8 o'clock at night, and it's dark, and the women are now in the car park in the dark on their own with not the community of people visiting. So we've come to realise that's a bit of a safety issue, and I think we're addressing that at the moment. We're changing the appointment times so women aren't having to expect. We have security, and I'm sure it would be all right, but it's just something that we've become aware of in the last couple of weeks or last couple of months. So the antenatal visits, I think some women will feel quite disconnected and not seeing us enough. And other women are really grateful that they don't have to keep coming in and paying all those parking fees. But ultimately, we are making sure that anybody who's got any risk factors, they are always seen, and the women can always say, look, I know it was only supposed to be a phone call visit today, but I really want to come in. And we will never deny them that. So that's something to really think about. Just because we say this is what it is, you still can say, oh, but I need this today for me, or I'm worried. And then if that doesn't happen, there's always the number of the ward that you're going to. You can ring them up and say, the minute you call them and say, I'm worried, they say, okay, come on in. Absolutely no question. They never question you. Well, sometimes they might question you a little bit. But if you really need reassurance, they're very welcoming for you to come in and be reassured on the ward as well. So, and I think all hospitals would be the same in that sense. So again, more scans. If you need scans, the men usually can't go to those. But we've covered that with, well, they can listen in on the phone, or you make sure you take. I actually don't know now. I'm sure they give out the films and the photos, but I don't know
the little
if you,
CDs or something.
Yeah, I think you might have to make sure you ask for that if you're going along to say, I want it videoed. I'm not sure what they do with those nowadays. So that's the antenatal appointments. Anything else there that could
What
be...
about women who want to feel comfortable with their surroundings? So sometimes in the past, women have been able to have a tour of the hospital, or they've been able to have classes there. What about those kinds of scenarios?
Thanks, Julie. Bridget, I completely forgot about that. So there's, and this is so important. So we always used to do a tour of the hospital. Any hospital would do a tour, and most of they're really valuable. I used to love doing the tours of the hospital because I'd make it like a mini birth class, and we'd get into the birth room and I'd show them all the equipment and bring in a few ideas and things like that. Other midwives are less they don't like that public speaking so much, so it might just be a quick look. This is the birth room, and that's the bathroom, and that's the toilet. And any questions? Yep, see you later. And that's okay. They just don't like speaking in front of people, but you get a sense that it's not because they're terrible midwives. They just don't like speaking in front of 40 people. They can be quite intimidating to a midwife, actually, a big group. And you have to talk loudly because, anyway, they're not on at the moment, so I don't need to go down that road. We were hoping to get one of my other colleagues. We really wanted to do a film of us doing a tour of the birth unit online, and we just haven't been able to get that started yet. So in most hospitals, you will be able to go online, and there's probably pictures of everything you need to know. So make sure whatever hospital you're booking into, you Google them and see what they've got available online, because a lot of this has become available online. There's also a lot of I know I've just started some, like a Zoom version, it's called WebEx, versions of childbirth education. So that was completely shut down right from the beginning. Suddenly we just weren't doing classes anymore, and our families were horrified. It was like, what? No, we need to have childbirth classes. And there was a lot of became available online again, but not like a face-to-face class. But it covered the basics for a little while, and now everywhere's getting a bit more creative. And there's also a lot of stuff, not just to do with hospitals online, but I really encourage, I know hospital classes can cop a bit of criticism for being all about policy and protocol, and I can pretty much assure you that's not what they're about. Midwives love physiological labour and birth and breastfeeding and all of that process. They will bring it into their classes as much as possible. So somebody doing a private class like calm birth or hypnobirthing or a private session, they're fantastic. They're really great classes, but then not necessarily preparing you for where you're giving birth. So the hospital classes will always talk about their policies and protocols, but we also talk about your ability to question and decline and say no and I don't agree. Please, please, please make sure you question any of your caregivers about what they're recommending or advising, and make sure you understand it. And if they're rushing you, you stop them and say, tell me that again, I didn't understand, and why, or can you show me the evidence? What's the paper that you read? Just ask those questions. That's what being a savvy woman is all about in this environment. So I think our hospital classes, most of them do a really good job. And we also cater to a huge audience. Women who are going to the calm birth classes, I'm just using them as an example, but any of those private classes, they are of a mindset where they want to achieve that physiological birth most of the time. The women couples that we see in the hospital classes, we might have 8 couples. One is just like, forget about your hippie shih tzu and just talk about the epidurals, please. Just get to that straight away. And I'm not breastfeeding. I don't need to know about that. And then somebody who's a little bit in the middle, who's quite interested in natural birth, but wants to know about the other stuff just in case, and then somebody who's got lots of medical issues going on, and we have to talk about induction and interventions, and somebody who's either not given a choice but they have to have a cesarean because their baby's in a transverse position or something medically is going wrong for them. So we have to talk about everything. Because we have to talk about everything, each subject gets only a limited amount of time. So our classes, so now we're back to WebEx classes in a lot of the hospitals, and they might be a series of 3 weeks or a one-day Saturday session. So it's a taste. That's all it can be. It's an introduction to these are the things you need to know. We'd like you to know. These are things you could go and research yourself, and maybe these are some books you could read, but the books I read might not be the same sort of books that you want to read. So, sharing that knowledge is a really good idea. Talk about what you have read, talk about what you've seen, so we can dispel the myths or encourage you to just keep asking questions, really. So the education space has changed quite a lot, but I think we're getting better at it, Bridget, definitely, in a very short space of time as well. Oh, my God, I've had to learn tech stuff that I never thought. And one of my bosses actually said to me the other day, it was kind of sweet. She said, "Sue, if I had told you you were doing this 6 months ago, you would have ranted and raved and carried on and stamped your feet. And look at you now." And I kind of beat my own chest a little bit. I said, "Yeah, I can fix tech problems on WebEx without crying." I'll add, without crying, just taking a deep breath and going, "I can do this. It's fine." So that's what I want to get across to the women. You can do it. It's fine. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
In terms of advocacy, like you were talking about before, we say here's the things you can say yes to, and here's your plethora of choices. In a pandemic that's altered a little bit, are you able just to shed a little bit of light on that?
Yes, that's and again this week that has really, really there's been a few game changers this week that we really have no control over.
And that's because we're here. We're talking to Susan in Melbourne. She's a Melbourne midwife, and for those who aren't familiar, in Melbourne we're in stage 4 lockdown, so it's pretty significant. If you're listening elsewhere in the country or internationally, it might be different where you are, but the COVID is changing things quickly too.
Yeah, it certainly is. Darn COVID, darn you. we just want to stomp and scream and shout. So apart from all those antenatal changes, a big thing that women are now facing, but really it's only a small thing because, again, in the hospital situation, not many women make use of water and the bath, but now you're not going to be able to make use of the water and bath. There's been some discussion that splashing can render a midwife's personal protective equipment, so the gowns, the masks and the shields, if they get splashed with water, that makes them ineffective as protection for the midwife. So the powers that be, and this comes from DHHS to all hospitals, is that we can no longer offer water birth and showering as a very primary source of pain relief to encourage natural births. And it seems to be a bit of a crazy situation, and the Australian College of Midwives has come out with a statement saying there is no evidence that supports this at all. Can we please relook at this situation? And it's still in that place of, we just don't know what to do about it, so we'll just say no. So there's a very strong reality that if you were one of those women hoping for a water birth, or at least to labour in water or to use the shower, it might not be offered to you. So we're going to have to think on our feet, like, what other strengths and resources have we got to make this a really beautiful experience for you? And in reality, it's only a small percentage of women actually have water births in the hospital situation. Some women have never thought about it before, but it's kind of funny when it's now not available to you, it becomes more interesting and more alluring almost. Like, tell me more about this water birth that we're not allowed to have anymore.
I didn't know that was an option, but now I want it.
Exactly, yeah.
Tell me about what you would advise women to consider as alternatives to pain relief or moving with their labour that don't include water. What would you suggest?
Oh gosh, how much time have we got to talk about this? Like, it's almost like a mini childbirth class, isn't it? So I would always start, when I'm talking about this in my classes, I always start with looking at your environment. So looking at your birth space, the birth room that you enter. So in a lot of places there's nice murals on the wall, there's low lighting. Midwives get this stuff already, you know. It's very rare that you walk into a birth room now with the lights blaring and all the equipment out. We've become very good at creating this very safe space for women. But it is still a hospital space, and there's the bed in the middle of the room, and there is emergency equipment now in a place that we can access very quickly if we need it, because we do a lot of intervention, so it has to be there for us now. But let's say you can't get in the bath and you can't get in the shower and you're in this lovely room with beautiful low lighting. Definitely bring in your own music and start listening to this music and really, really start practicing some meditations, some visualizations, some affirmations in your pregnancy with your partner, so that you're both doing this together, because it changes the chemistry in the brain. It changes the pathways in the brain, so that as soon as you put that music on, you breathe, you relax, you feel at home. It doesn't matter what music it is. It can be punk rock, it can be whales and dolphins singing, it can be meditation music, whatever you want. Just start playing it. And I always say to the guys, just put it on for her. Don't get her to ask you to do it. I always talk about, for the men, the partners, to anticipate what she might need rather than asking her, because we don't want to bring her out of her that middle brain space where she's trying to get into her mammalian behaviour. We don't want to turn on her neocortex. So music is really powerful, and that breath work is really powerful. And we haven't got time to go into all the different ways we can do it. There's actually no way of doing it. It's just your way. But it's basically slowing it down deeply, and really breathing into your belly and breathing into your baby and breathing into your heart space. Something else I've started introducing too is... Actually, no, I've always done this, but movement. Movement is very powerful. So play around with positioning your body, play around with how you're going to kneel on a chair, or if you are getting on the bed, how you're going to lie on it, or kneeling up on it, or using the balls. There's so much equipment in our birth rooms that you can use to be active and upright. And again, for the partners to say, hey, she's been sitting on that ball for about 3 hours now and nothing seems to be changing. Let's get her up moving. Put on some music, hold her in your arms, give her a kiss, stare into her eyes. But you know what? This eye-gazing business, you can't do it if you've never practiced it before, but just over the next few weeks, sit with each other really quietly, practice that slow, deep breath, and look into each other's eyes and connect, and then put your heart on each other's heart space and really connect, and maybe with the baby as well. But it has to be practiced, because it all feels a bit weird when you first do it and you've never done it before. So just practice it. And when you're in that birth space, that's what you can do. You've got your music playing, you've got your slow rocking, swaying movements with the dancing and looking into each other. That creates a bubble for you. And it's creating that bubble that will make this hospital birth room that's full of scary COVID stuff, which it isn't, but, that's what we're being told in the news at the moment. That bubble is going to be incredibly safe for you, and it's you and your partner creating that with your midwife guarding that space for you.
Can I ask, in the birth space, do mother and partner need to wear masks?
The partner does. At the moment, the mother doesn't. She will if she becomes COVID positive. And if the partner becomes COVID positive, then he won't be allowed in the room. I just know that that's probably going to happen. Hopefully we'll never have to cross that bridge, but it might be something we have to cross. So what are you going to do if that happens? What is that woman going to do? She's going to really rely on her midwife. And I was saying earlier, a lot of women want a sister or a mother, or a best friend or a doula. They've hired a doula to help them with all this stuff that I'm talking about. And now that usually the doula is a she, but that second support person who's also a support person for the partner, they're not allowed in the space anymore. So how can we bring their energy? I think, again, from Jules and Bridget, I'm learning so much about energy. It sounds so woo-woo, doesn't it? This cosmic energy, but bring their energy into the room. So that might be photos of them all over the place. It might be a sound recording, a video recording, so she can just pick up her phone and press play, and there is her second support person, her mother, her sister, her best friend, her doula, doing a breathing exercise with her, doing a visualization. And if, heaven forbid, it does have to be the partner that's not in the room, he can be doing that with her. I'm sure there are ways we can be creative to enable that energy to be present in the room. And I can promise you the midwives will bend over backwards if that is the situation for you, because they know how painful that would be. They know how challenging that would be. And the doctors, if they're in that space as well, the obstetricians, if they need to come into the room, they're going to know what you're feeling. They're feeling it too. This is, for all of us, this is supposed to be the most joyous time of our lives, even if it is challenging, even if it is difficult. It's even more difficult at the moment, but only if we let that take over in our heads. And I think our mindset is so powerful. We can let this story take over and run riot, or we can find ways to calm that story down and change it into a different story. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's really not going. It's going to be very challenging if we get to that point in time. But there definitely are ways that we can create a positive vibe and a positive energy for the women. And can I just add one more thing to that, Julie? Yeah. And this came from one of my favourite authors is Millie Hill, who's written a book called Birth Like a Feminist. Actually, there's two books. The other one's called Transformed by Birth. This is shameful promotion. I hope that's all right. Transformed by Birth by Britta Bushnell. They're both English midwives and educators. And now I forgot what I was going to say.
About Millie Hill's book?
Yeah. Sorry, I've gone completely blank. It was like a light bulb moment and it's gone.
It'll come back. That happens to me all the time. Yeah. Let me ask you about some of the other changes that might be happening post-birth. So at this point in time, assuming no one's COVID positive, partners can stay for the duration of the birth and then for 2 hours post-birth. Is that correct?
Yes. The theory is 2 hours post-birth, but they probably can stay longer. They just can't spend the night there. They can't sleep in a bed there, but they are able to stay probably for longer than 2 hours. But once they go home, they have to stay at home, and also when they're in the labour space, they're not able to go in and out of the room or go out for some breath. You know, we often used to say, we were talking before about partners not coping in the birth space. Often they would go out for a breath of fresh air or quite possibly a cigarette, and come back in just feeling like they've had a break, and that second support person has come in as a tag team. It's been a really effective way of helping everybody cope with stressful situations just in a normal birth process, let alone what we're having to do now. And so now he the support person, has to stay in the room the whole time. So hopefully he's got some coping strategies as well to re-energize as well, because it can be, if you're in there for 6, 10, 12, 18 hours, 24 hours sometimes. It's pretty hard work for everybody involved. So we've got to really be sure that we're looking after the support people as well. But, yeah, they're not able to come in and out, so that can be very claustrophobic to somebody.
That's really valid advice, though, is to consider if you cannot leave the space once you're in there, how is also your support person being supported? Like, I do think that's really valuable thing to think about when planning your birth.
So that person might need to phone their parents or a friend, or just step away, step into the bathroom and drink some water, really for all of you to stay well nourished and well hydrated and well oxygenated with beautiful breath work. It's so, and this stuff works for life. It's not just something that, I need to do this for my labour and birth. You need these ways of coping to get through the difficult nights with a brand new baby, to get through the worry of your teenager out on the road in its car for the first time. They're life skills. So don't ever dismiss them as, but that's just kind of hippie stuff that natural birth midwives do. It's not. These are skills for life. It's so important to learn them. So for the support people as well.
I love that. And then you were saying the other change is early discharge.
Yeah, so again, there's positives to everything. I promise you there are positives to everything. And the positive to an early discharge, and we're talking usually about 6 hours, but it might be 10 hours, is that you get to go home and be with your partner in your own love bubble with your brand new baby, with nobody annoying you.
Yeah.
No midwives coming in and giving you 10 different pieces of information. No cleaners coming in and vacuuming your room when you wanted to just sleep, and none of the doctors doing their rounds checking in. You can be at home in your own bed, curled up with your baby and your partner, and okay, you're going to be feeling a bit anxious and a bit nervous, and guess what? You're not going to know what to do with that baby that first night or the second night or the third night. So it really doesn't matter that you go home at 6 hours instead of 26 hours or 46 hours. 2 days in hospital with us giving you lots of education. I promise you now, as valid as the education is, it often goes in one ear and out the other, because you're not in a space to listen. You're in a space to just be with your baby. So this early discharge is actually fabulous, because you don't get separated from your partner. And that's a really good thing to look at. And the bonus is that the midwives will come and visit you at home the next day, and we can spend a lot longer with you in a home visit than we could possibly on the ward in a whole shift. So that's also a bonus. And there's always a number to ring if you get stuck. We're never just, I promise you, we don't abandon you and throw you to the wolves and say, you're on your own, figure it out. There's always a number you can call for help and reassurance. And again, it's challenging because possibly your parents might not be there, and your mother might have been coming to cook your meals and do your laundry, and what are you going to do if that's not possible? So, you get those meals cooked for you and left at the door. Maybe you've got a freezer and you can freeze a lot of stuff, so you're concentrating on still being in your birth bubble with your baby and not having to do all that work.
Totally.
And a lot of parents, I think they did a study in England, and the breastfeeding rates are skyrocketing, which is interesting because in England, I don't think they have a very strong breastfeeding culture. And was it breastfeeding? No, I think it was birth weight. The birth weights of babies were going up because women, that's it. It was the birth weight of babies was improving because women are just staying at home. They're in lockdown here and they can't go anywhere. So they're doing the traditional 40 days of lying in with their partner, and hopefully some support from family as well. But they're resting. There's nothing to do.
Yeah, they're resting.
We can't go for
feeding, cuddling
kilometres at the moment. So what's more interesting than jumping into bed and feeding your baby for 15 hours at a time? You don't need to do anything else. So there's actually a real positive to that. It's probably more challenging for women who've had a Caesar because they generally do need to stay in for at least 2 days for 48 hours just to cover pain relief and make sure that they're safe with baby.
So has that changed? Because did that used to be longer? That used to be 4 nights or something?
It used to be 3 nights, which that's not very much after major abdominal surgery.
No. So now it's 2 nights.
So now it's 2 nights. But if there's any
partner's not there,
he can only come for visiting hours between, I think most hospitals are the same, between 5 and 7 in the evening. But you can turn that around a bit. And what I say is, you know what, he gets to go home, have a really good sleep, catch his breath, recover, debrief to his mates or his parents or whoever he needs to debrief to. And he comes back energized. He comes back fresh, ready to help, be hands-on, instead of exhausted and tired and overwhelmed. He gets to have that break, which can be really positive for the women as well, because she knows she's going to hopefully come home to a clean house and a cooked meal and the laundry done. Guys, take note.
Now, the last point was that the postnatal visits have also changed. Are you able to just talk us through those?
The home visits?
I assume that you were saying where you're talking in the car and then you go in for breastfeeding, and how perhaps breastfeeding has changed.
Oh, well, I've just touched briefly on the midwife coming to visit your home, so you get extra visits. Normally, in pre-COVID times, women, even with a normal birth, would stay in for 2 nights, then go home. First-time mums would get a visit the next day, and second-time mums usually another day before they get their visit. So we're visiting up 4 to 5 times now. Sometimes the women only need 1 or 2 visits. Or if they go home early, it will be at least 2 visits. But they might get 3 or 4 if they need. So there's plenty of support at home. And then, of course, we refer you to the maternal and child health nurse, who most centres aren't doing home visits at the moment. They'll do a phone call, and then you have to go into the centre to have a baby check, a baby weigh. That maybe is a bit more difficult, particularly if you've had a Caesar and you don't really feel like getting up. You know, we're talking about being in this beautiful bubble at home, but now you've got to go out again. So I think that's maybe a bit more challenging, but I've got no control over how they organise that. But I think again, I really want to emphasise that the health professionals are there to do their best and to help you, not to stonewall you or make your life more difficult. And we're just all having to pull together in terms of this new environment. But then if you do need breastfeeding help as well, make sure you make use of, first of all, the hospital's lactation support services. They're usually really great services, and we're doing face-to-face visits. We had thought about doing, we tried for about a week of doing phone call consults, and it was a nightmare. It just doesn't work over the phone. We have to be able to watch a baby feeding, watch what a mother's doing with her baby, watch her face, there's these micro movements that will make all the difference that can't be discussed over a phone. So we do offer face-to-face visits. Most hospitals will be doing face-to-face visits. Again, partners generally can't come in, but if we can organise a room that's big enough to allow the 1.5 distancing, then it's not usually. Sorry, there was my foot just past the window there. I can't bend this knee still. It has to go back. So partners can't come to that. But yes, there is plenty of support for breastfeeding on hand. So always use your hospital's free service, because I really emphasise it's all free. And then if you still have trouble, there's a lot of beautiful lactation consultants on the Mornington Peninsula and surrounding areas who offer amazing service as well, but obviously that's their income, so they have to charge for those. But it's well worth paying one of them a visit if you need to, for that extra support. So there is lots of help out there, but sometimes we get so tired and overwhelmed we forget to reach out and ask for it.
Are there any movements within that? Like, I know we talked about it before, but in terms of policies and protocols, and women's always previously having choice, and those choices maybe being a little bit different now, given that there's a pandemic and there becomes this waiver of a human rights kind of advocacy over the top. Is there anything that we've discussed or that you think is relevant for women to go, look, that's a non-negotiable within a hospital system, or these are the places that you can have manoeuvrability in a pandemic?
I probably can't answer that fully because we haven't reached that point yet.
Yeah.
Except for we've touched on the water birth and showering as being non-negotiable at the moment. I don't think that is, but hopefully, you know, for the women that are just discovering their pregnancies and they're not due until February or March, hopefully all of that will have gone, and hopefully. And we talked about this without getting into the politics of it all. Sometimes these things, once they're taken away from us, they're not brought back again. It's like, oh, well, you survived perfectly fine without face-to-face childbirth classes. We'll do them all online now. Or you survived all right without water birth. We don't need water birth. We won't offer that anymore, because I'm sure there are some schools of thought in the obstetric world maybe that don't really like it. Anyway, I promised I wasn't going to go down the political road, so I won't talk about that.
I didn't want you to go as more thinking, you know, is that different in this current climate for women or not?
So there definitely is. There are going to be some things that we can't change, and we just have to accept, because ultimately what's happening at the moment is so new. Nobody really knows the best way to deal with it. Everybody's doing the best they can. Nobody's just trying to be difficult, from the top level politicians to the micromanagers on the floor. They're all just really doing their best, just as each human being is doing their best to cope. And some of us are coping better than others, and some are breaking the rules a bit. And I'm getting quite distressed at sort of the level of vigilantism at the moment. It's like crazy. This kind of situation can turn us against each other, or it can really bring us together. And I think we're still riding that wave of where are we? And I was speaking to my sister today, and actually, no, it wasn't my sister, it was my daughter, and she was saying, oh, but the neighbour, no, it might have been a flatmate or somebody anyway. Somebody was going in and out of the house, and she felt like, well, everybody else is breaking the rules, so why don't I? And my only answer to that was, because you're a person of integrity, and we have to have integrity. And so that means, and I don't know if you guys agree with that either, it's but for me, we're just doing the best we can. We really are. And it is so new and so unknown that we're kind of making it up as we go along, just as you do when you're parents. It's actually really fantastic preparation for being a parent.
Yeah. Lack of predictability.
Break the rules sometimes, reinvent the rules. Take a breath.
Susan, before I ask you our 3 quickfire questions, which we ask every guest on the podcast, is there anything that you would like to leave couples with who may find themselves birthing within this current pandemic?
I think what I want to end on is that you are stronger than you know. Believe in that. Believe in the team supporting you, from your home support, your partners, to the midwives and obstetricians. They really will try to make this the best experience for you as possible. And you can do it. It doesn't matter what the experience is in the end. It will be, don't you hate that expression as well? It will be what it will be. Hate that. But it kind of will be. And I've still got this thought from Millie Hill floating through my head, and I just can't reach it. But we are super creatures. We're strong and resilient, and you can get through this, but you have to put your mind to it and be creative and adapt. I think creativity and adaptability are really important attributes to have when birthing in the time of COVID.
Thank you. So I wonder, our first question in our questions that we ask our guests are, is there a time that you can recall that you're willing to share that you have had an experience of a wound that you've turned into wisdom in your life?
Oh, where do I start with that one?
Anywhere you like.
Oh, my goodness. I possibly would have needed a bit of preparation for that. Quickly. Go on to the next question.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should be able to answer that. I've just got
don't.
too many.
Totally. Let's let it sit and we can come back to it.
Yeah.
Books that have been most meaningful to you that you wish every woman would read in her lifetime, or maybe read in preparation for birth or motherhood.
Oh, my goodness. That's another. I've got a library of them, but I'm going to quickly reel them off because I can do this easily and you'll understand why I talk about this woman so passionately. So Rhea Dempsey. Pretty much my childbirth class is a complete copy of her work.
She's phenomenal, isn't she?
She's amazing.
She has taught me so much. Lael Stone, About Birth Online, is another incredibly amazing woman. I just love everything she writes. So Sarah Buckley, Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering is one of my favourites. And my two new ones, I mentioned them before, Millie Hill, Birth Like a Feminist, and Transformed by Birth by Britta Bushnell. Those two have become my favourites. For a true understanding of the physiological process, if you want to go a little bit deeper and a bit more cerebral perhaps, is anything written by Michelle Odent, who's a French obstetrician from a long time ago, who kind of pioneered water birth. He's written some incredible work on oxytocin and the physiology of birth. Ina May Gaskin, of course, is a little bit out there, but
it's a great read, though.
I just love it.
I know.
It's so good.
She's been going for a long time, and her hospital transfer rate is 1%. So
amazing, isn't it?
Look her up, yeah. So they're probably, and in terms of post-birth, some great books I've read. One is by a doctor called Pamela Douglas, who has a business called Possum's Education, which is all about that sort of neurological programming and safety and security for a baby and breastfeeding and managing problems. And a partner she works with called Koa Douglas, Becoming Mum. So it's her book's called Becoming Mum, which is all about mindfulness and being present and not letting. It's so easy to get overwhelmed and lose a sense of self in your work as a mother. Just you transform and you become a different person, and in becoming a different person you lose some of what you had, but you gain a lot more, but the loss can sometimes be really overwhelming. So strategies for her. And then my other favourite post-birth book in terms of babies and sleep and crying and is the No Cry Sleep Solution.
Elizabeth Pantley, I think, isn't it?
Thank you, Elizabeth Pantley. Yes. A very gentle approach, again, to this notion that babies should sleep and babies shouldn't cry and babies should or shouldn't do this. She just says sometimes they do this and sometimes they don't. And some days they need a bit more love than others. And so very gentle approaches to which, you know what, most parents really want to listen to because it actually resonates in their heart. The minute they start reading the books that talk about controlled crying or scheduling, or there's a couple of books I really don't want you to read.
Okay, we can guess the name of one of those, I reckon.
Yeah, very celebrity based. Yeah, there's a couple that are just dangerous. You know, they're just if our world relied on authors like this, we'd be in a real mess, I think. But having said that, those books sometimes resonate with some women
Some people,
can give
yeah.
them a sense of
Yeah.
control. So it's not about what I like. It's about
No,
what
but we're just
resonates
sharing
with you.
what are the books that you love.
These are the books that I love.
Yeah. All right. So our last question is: if you could have a billboard anywhere in the world on any major superhighway, what would it say?
What would it say? You are stronger than you know. I think you have strength beyond your wildest dreams if you let it come out. That's too many words on a billboard. You are stronger than you know. And the other billboard on the other side of the road could say something like, just hold each other. Just love.
I love that you've created 2 billboards. This is just like your whole podcast where you're like, yeah, this is the system where the billboard is, but you could create another one over the other side of the road too.
That's great. We've never had anybody do that. I love it.
Gantries are and the light goes off on the freeway. Well, they could somehow do some subliminal messages like, you just keep going. It's fine. You'll survive. What was that original question again?
It was, can you think of a time that you've turned a wound into wisdom in your life?
Oh, I'm still struggling with that. But
is there advice you give your kids, or is there a motherhood kind of
try.
antidote?
You know about that one, don't you?
What about like a mother antidote though? You know, like you're an experienced mum, 3 kids who are grown. Like that's very different to Bridge and I and all of our listeners. Like, is there even that kind of grandmotherly wisdom or motherly wisdom that's like, yeah, I used to think that too, and then this happened and now I think like that?
Oh,
like, is there anything?
This isn't anything to do with parenting. This is me, and it's just suddenly popped into my head. But I learnt one day that I felt like I had to fix everybody, and I was the fixer, the rescuer, and of course there was nothing wrong with me. It was everybody else. So all the problems that I had in my world, which were sizable, relationships and difficult teenagers, that was kind of it, really. But that's enough. Like, oh God, babies are a breeze compared to teenagers, trust me. But what I was doing was making them wrong and me right. And one day it hit me like a bolt between my eyes, and I suddenly realised that that's what I'd been doing. I'd been making them wrong in trying to be right. And that was the worst thing I could do. So I think my biggest learning was, if you only ever see somebody like this, that's all they'll ever be to you. But if you turn it around and look at somebody and say, wow, you are actually this. You are strong and knowledgeable, and you provide love in this way. It might not be the way that I really wanted it, but this is what you do. That was a game changer for me, sort of seeing the good in people, really, and then realising that I actually don't have to fix anything. I just have to, and again, you guys have been on a little bit of that journey with me too, that, if you just always see one person as a particular thing, you'll never change your mind. So start learning to see them as glorious people with skills and love and attribute, because then it's shined back at you. It does. It shines back at you if you give it out. If you stay in this negative, again, energy, and you give out, think negatively, that's all that comes back to you. And if you think with strength and creativity and positivity, which is different to choose, for a while there was that thing that went around saying choose happiness, and that's not easy to do. You can't just choose happiness. But maybe finishing on Maya Angelou's quote of change your attitude, you can still sit with sadness, you can still cope with sadness, but you can create a different reality for yourself. And I'm still learning that skill. I haven't mastered it. I have to practice it every day. And I think
if you're human, you do.
Yeah, exactly. We're human. We stuff up all the time, and you will stuff up all the time, and you'll learn. But if you stuff up, you know what? You just say you're sorry with meaning and intention. I've stuffed up with my kids so many times, and I've always apologised to them, and that's what they remember. It came up at a 21st birthday once.
That's so good.
There was a story where, Mum, do you remember that time you did this? And I almost crashed the car because maybe that was the thing, the wisdom. I had buried it so deep because it was so distressing to me that I had forgotten. I had made myself forget. It was one of those really bad mother moments where I possibly was responsible for altering the whole psychological course of my son's life.
God, I don't think so, but okay. Podcast for another day.
It's definitely a podcast for another day. But he brought it up jokingly, and I did this reaction of, you know, the cold sweat came out, the weight of it, and he saw me react. He was sitting in the back seat, and he realised that he'd triggered something in me. And he very quickly said, "But you know what, Mum, you said you were sorry." And that meant more than anything to me because I realised that, you know, you were okay. Words to that effect. I don't know. So that was a big moment for me in knowing your mistakes and moving through them and learning from them and saying sorry. You know, it's kind of simple, really, not being righteous. And
hard to do, though, if you're hanging on to
oh God, it's so hard. You do. You have to, just like with your deep breath, you have to practice it every day, gazing into your lover's eyes. You have to practice it like brushing your teeth to make it a practice, to make it work.
Totally.
It doesn't just oh God, we could talk about this stuff for hours, couldn't we?
We're going to go, though, Sue. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight and wisdom into the system as it exists currently within a pandemic for women and how they and their partners can begin to consider to resource themselves to have the best possible birth outcome that they can have with still a team that wants to support them. So really resourcing themselves to do that. So I really appreciate your time in being here.
You've summed that up beautifully, Julie. If I could say it like that, it would have been a much shorter podcast.
Well, you know, we love a conversational moment, though. So we're deeply... And you have that beautiful midwifey, like just Mother Earthy, you know, we'll just sit and have a cup of tea.
Softness,
all your
2 hours later.
Yeah. Like, I just think you have that magic about you. I feel like if you just sat me down on a cup of tea, I'd be like, oh, your life's fixed. All fine.
Oh, no, it's never fixed. I think we'd all be dead if it was fixed.
Anyway, so we really hope that our beautiful listeners get something incredible out of it.
Yeah, and I wish them all the best of luck, send them lots of love, and you can so do this. Whatever it is that's coming to you, you can do it. Absolutely. And you'll love it.
Such beautiful sentiment.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
So to connect with us is nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. Connect with you, Bridgie.
Suburbansandcastles.com, and you, Jules.
Is thepleasurenutritionist.com. And we will, no, you go.
Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.